Everyone would join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes, I can see it's on.
Okay. Thank you. It's Wednesday, January 22nd. We're at West Rutland School. First order of business is a motion to approve the agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, changes to the agenda?
We want to add contract recommendations.
Under 5B,
I was gonna say, it's already on
It's
there.
on there.
Okay.
we're good
Okay,
with that?
Never mind, it's fine.
Okay. So a motion to approve the agenda as presented would be in order.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Great. Public comments. Don't really have any public, so moving along. Minutes of the November 20th meeting. Give you a moment to review.
Geez, they look great to me, but then again, I wasn't here, so.
If everyone's had a chance, a motion to approve would be in order.
Make a motion.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Warrants, the approval of warrants. Seth is still signing warrants, right?
Lisa,
Yes.
before you move on to warrants, could we have discussion about the adjournment of the executive session on the last page of the minutes? Does anybody have any notes of that? I could get out my notes.
I don't have my notes here, but I have
Before
notes
the
from
board, the board
office.
discussed the next meeting date. Well, I guess, what is the question, or the discussion?
Executive session ended at 9:20. My notes indicate is that December 4th, right?
Okay,
And the adjournment followed immediately after. Could we have the? this
Oh,
is
the
I'm
ti-
sorry, this is the wrong, that's not the right meeting. Keep looking.
so what are you looking for? The time to put in for adjournment?
Right.
Yes,
Yes.
I am.
Okay. I didn't bring my minutes with me. Can we have Judy look at her notes and, insert the time?
Good.
With that, is there any objection to that?
No.
All right, thank you. Approval of warrants. You received the warrants in your email. Were there any questions? I think Eric is still going in, or not Eric, Seth. I know, that's gonna be the death of me. Seth is still going in and, signing warrants.
Although if he's gone, is there a backup?
If he's gone, he's supposed to contact, me, and he hasn't done that, so. I'm assuming, I haven't heard
He
from
was
the
gone
local.
just this week, but, so he would have.
He's been coming, right?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
see him.
All right, if there are no questions, a motion would be in order to approve the warrants.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Superintendent's report?
All right, I'm actually gonna pass it out. Sorry, I should have passed it out earlier, but I was a little busy.
There's meetings before meetings.
Yeah.
We were delinquent in reading our emails about it.
For those of you who have had board meetings this month, it's not a lot different
do we
from what
need
you
more?
saw at your board, but I'll just go through it quickly. Most of our focus this month is finishing budgets, preparing for town meeting and the budget vote. The annual warnings, I wrote this in anticipation of today, have been completed and should be posted by tomorrow. Most of the information's been submitted for the annual reports for each school district. And then just for people's information, I have dates you need to remember. Those that are running for board, your petitions will be due January 27th to your respective towns. Annual meetings and votes, Corey Valley is 7 PM Tuesday, February 25th at Pulteney High School, and voting at your town's voting location on March 3rd, 2020. Wells Springs, they are meeting at 7 on Wednesday, February 26th at Wells Village School, and they're voting at their town's respective voting locations on March 3rd. Rutland Town, their annual meeting is Monday, March 2nd at Rutland Town School, and they're voting at their 2 locations in Rutland Town on March 3rd. And IRA has their meeting on Monday, March 2nd in the IRA Town Hall, and they vote in the IRA Town Office on March 3rd. And booklets will be available at all the various locations for your respective boards. I didn't want to get into a lot of detail there. Our administrative work groups continue to focus on a number of topics, including procedures, to align common procedures for budgets, policies, et cetera, and proficiency-based grading, which Lisa's heading up. The high school principals are also looking at sharing a common schedule, which will allow them to share classes and resources more effectively. They've been working really hard on that, some good work going on. The last district management group was held in December, and the main topic was strategies for selling the budget. So we shared that at a January administrators meeting, along with a work session on developing PowerPoints and annual reports. The Southwest, Vermont Superintendents Association met in December with the area legislators, and they discussed upcoming legislative topics, including school construction aid, school safety, lead water testing, Act 77, the Proficiency-Based Learning Act, the Special Ed Funding Act, and the pre-K. And what they do is they get input from us, or they will tell us where they think it's going. It's just really a sharing session. And then we get further updates a little bit more in the legislative session. So that's where we are on that. And finally, this is one that everybody should be aware of. We met with Carl from the Rutland Waste Management District regarding the universal composting law that's going to go into effect on July 1. And it requires all food scraps to be composted, and for our schools, that's a lot of food scraps. So some of this, we have different practices in place, with some schools having composting bins, and, I know Middletown Springs does a really good job already. But we also talked about, if it's too much, Lewis reached out to Casella Waste Management to get some prices, et cetera, but we are working on plans for the July 1 start. The good thing is, we don't have kids in session on July 1st. And also, we're ahead of the curve. It's January, and we're looking ahead, so we won't get caught short on what to do with all those food scraps. Because, with hot lunch every day, and snacks and breakfast, that's a lot of food scraps.
Oh.
We talked about it very seriously, and I know there's a lot of joking about trying to find farmers who might want it for their pigs or their chickens, and that they're free to take it. So that's a public service announcement. Contact any of your area schools. And the other thing is the education piece also for communities, because we're all going to have this law. We invited the Rutland Waste Management Group, if they want to do presentations, that they could maybe do it in schools and reach out to parents and things like that. It's a good way to get it out in the community.
Mm-hmm. So now, have we've addressed what this cost is going to be, and that's built into our budget?
Some of our schools are giving it away, so there's no cost.
Right.
And the other schools that are not currently composting, their primary goal is to find someone to come get it and take
Okay.
it. Really having Casellas come as a backup. We don't have money specific to composting in the budget, but we do have our repairs lines. Once we have a better idea who's gonna need that and what that cost is gonna be, we can make some shifts and account for that in the next year's budget.
I mean, it could be very, very expensive if you can't find anybody, and I know, and this goes for households. Now, this is, how in the world are they gonna go to everybody's house to make sure you're doing this, number one? It's not enforceable. But take the school. If we have a compost to teach the kids, the, environmentalists, now I can see, because of the volume, I can just see, what are we gonna do with the wild animals that are gonna come and root around in there? There's just so many things to think of.
Yeah.
And at $20 a barrel, I think that's what you said, Louis, something like that.
$20, yep, a 32-gallon bin.
So how many schools are we looking at that would need that service versus schools that already have something in place?
We don't know that yet. There's only, I think, 2 schools that
I
are
think
currently
Middletown and Proctor Elementary have the biggest composting.
those are the ones that are composting, maybe Wells
And-
also, was
and-
Wells.
and-
Wells is a pickup.
Right,
Yeah.
and
They have a pickup agreement, but we do not put food scraps
Proctor
in.
Elementary also has pickup.
Now, how do you handle classrooms? Because when they were talking, they were saying, well, each classroom will have to have a bin, and then they'll have to make sure they empty those bins, and
At Wells Village School, and I don't know, I can't speak for the way Middletown School operates, but the children eat in the multi-purpose room, and the bins are there. So,
They have snacks, they have little classroom bins that bring like milks or juices or fruit down, and then they put the waste in them and send them back to the
Awesome.
cafeteria, and they can dump them in the food bins and then let them put their dishwasher.
I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it. At the high school level, I remember Arlington High School had a composting club, and the kids would actually go around and pick up from the classrooms, and it was considered community service.
Yeah, at Greenmount College, it was almost 100% student done.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's still some of those folks around, Carl's one of them,
So-
who would be interested in doing some education in the schools.
Right, and
too.
that's
Yeah.
why he came, and
Yeah.
he's a great resource, and
Yeah.
will,
Yeah.
um,
College of St. Joe
come again.
had a great program. They came and
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had them do a
Um,
program.
What about coordinating with other larger institutions that also need to be doing this and are not yet? So like Cast University and that kind of thing. Is it more attractive? I don't know the pricing, right? But is it more attractive if there's more in one hallway? You
find
know what I
that
mean?
out, because
Maybe that's not an advantage. Maybe having less is
I
better.
think the best case scenario is if we can network and hook up with farmers that will come and haul it. I mean, that's a win-win situation. They get feed for their pigs and their chickens, and
Right.
we get rid of our waste, and, we may have to get rid of some more or compost on top of it, but
Yeah.
to get rid of all of it, it might be a combination. So anyway, that's something we're working on. It's gonna take work and planning in order to be ready for August.
We're in the district where you have a contracted food service. They aren't responsible for
That's how
taking
it
care of
should
the
be.
trash, they just pile up in the corner and we have to take over from there, is that the way it?
Yep,
Yes.
they're charging us on a per meal basis. So they're charging us for the creation of that meal, the cost of that meal. They're not, any waste that's left behind has always been our responsibility.
So I guess I would hope, and I'm certainly happy to speak to this in Corey Valley, but if you have a school that resides on property and where you can build a compost facility, I hope that that is the first thing we're looking at rather than trucking it off. I think that's kind of counterintuitive to what the, actually the essence of the project or the proposal is supposed to be. And I think that it does have a lot of, we're talking about, having programs and having all these things and having kids out of the classroom. There's no better way to do that. You're kind of two birds, one stone here, cleaning up the mess and teaching kids, and hoping that that's going to somehow transport going home, that when they go home that, they talk to their parents or things like that. And, I mean, building a compost, there's nothing, all you need some cardboard and, concrete barriers to build it. It's not rocket science. And the
Pellets.
worms will come.
Pellets, we made ours out
Oh,
of pellets.
If you have good cardboard, the worms will come. They love the glue in the cardboard.
Another industry that one of my neighbors was looking into that is interested in compost, like lots of compost, is hemp industry, and they will pay for it. But
Oh.
it's gotta be the right kind of compost, so it's not that straightforward, but they are interested. At least that's what my neighbor, who was very interested in starting his own compost all of a sudden when he found out how much money it might be involved. But and I know some local restaurants are, at least in Pulteney, people pick up their compost at like Taps Tavern already, and
So when Lynn said $20 a barrel, it's not by volume, it's by container size?
It's per barrel per pickup.
Okay.
So if the school has 5 barrels, or 5 bins, whatever you wanna call them.
And what are the size of the bins?
It's a
Just-
32-gallon bin. It's one of
Oh,
those
not
ones
big.
that you may have at home. It's on
Like-
wheels. It's about
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like
yay
a
high.
big garbage can.
They can't be too big because the waste that's going in it is very heavy.
Yeah.
So,
Also, it would-
if you fill it up,
could
it's,
easily be $100 a week, I think, at a school.
Yeah.
And regardless of how each school does it or each district decides,
Sure.
I think it's great, but we only have about 4 months before school's out. When the kids come back, we'll already have to be doing this. So we really have to start it this year in order for the kids to come back in and know what's going on, because we're gonna lose that training time for next year. So whatever school's doing it, we better start thinking quickly, because we gotta get the kids in a routine. So maybe it's something we wanna start sooner than later.
we've started the conversations at the
Right.
admin meeting. We had
Right,
someone
but
come
it was
in
like
and.
everybody's
yeah.
thinking, well, July 1st, we don't have to, well, really, we kinda have to start before then.
It's not really the admin you have to worry about, though. It's the kids where it needs to trickle down to.
Well, yeah, but the admin has to
So,
set up
well, each
the,
school needs to make their
Right.
plan.
Sure.
And it will look different at each school, depending on where they're at,
Well,
how big they are.
If there's not money budgeted,
There's money, there are increases built into the into the maintenance budgets at each school.
So the other piece of conversation that Carl may have had with Carl, maybe not, as part of the process is limiting what actually gets put into
Yes.
compost and salvaging food and things like that too. Because the less that goes in, period, is better.
Eliminating
strategy.
food waste,
Right.
right? Kristen?
Yeah.
And
So,
also
like,
the
fruits and
separation.
breads and- Yeah.
Right.
Between, like, you're gonna have some meat scraps at schools that you're not going to compost on site, or dairy scraps even for that matter. I mean, yes, they're compostable, but maybe not for a school setting.
Right.
So there's, admin and your plan going forward, I'm sure will cover all of that.
Yep, and he did talk about that.
yeah.
And we may have them back as we develop
I was
questions.
gonna say, it might not be a bad idea.
Yeah.
Who attended this?
All of the principals, it's our admin, so all the principals, myself, Christine, Lisa, Louis, all of us.
Yeah, it might not be a bad, to have him come to a meeting like this and do a PowerPoint or something.
He probably
Because
liked
then
it.
it's on PEG TV.
At
so-
an SU meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the
Yeah.
thing, yeah, because you figure February's gonna be gone. There isn't very many meetings, so now you're talking March before you could really get into anything.
Well, just so you
Right
start,
up through March, through town meeting anyway, so it's.
just so you're
depending on what
starting
happens.
getting
It's
it
only
out
gonna leave
there.
a
End of
few months
March.
to get going,
Yeah.
The only issue that have some concern about is attracting wild animals. We don't need friendly bears running around our school. And I don't know whether you've had any problem with that, maybe that's, they'll eat anything. And I mean, when they'll come in where humans are and rob garbage cans, they'd work on compost for you.
And I mean,
Yeah, we have a farm pickup and then we have like a big barrel that they turn.
Right.
They don't have
It's not open.
not an open compost at the elementary school. That's not what they have.
But
Yeah.
you can see where
Yeah, that could
that's
be,
out there free if
I mean,
it's.
we have bears to
if-
begin with, so now we don't need to attract more.
yeah.
Right. It depends on where your school is, like the
Right.
Proctor schools are more in town,
Mm-hmm.
and the
Yeah.
Polteny schools, and it's less of an issue than Middletown or Rutland Town or Wells. Well,
Mm-hmm.
Wells is in the
Wells is
village.
pretty rural too.
Yeah, it is
It
pretty
is.
though,
You know,
they're
it's-
all those fields.
But I'm just
And,
thinking, you
and
know,
Wells
as far as.
doesn't have the land to compost on.
Right,
on it.
and then we have the land, but I would be really, like I said,
Right, how
to
you do
attract.
it matters.
Yeah, it's
And
really
the
gonna
bins are
be,
very expensive, and you
Yeah.
would need it's not like a household bin, so you would need, it would cost a few bucks, so, yeah.
it's gonna be a learning curve the first year to see what that cost is going to be, and, you know, adjustments will probably have to be made within the first year,
I
because
mean, it
you
never
don't wanna be
fails,
spending
they-
thousands of dollars to get rid of your
No,
food refuse,
no,
so.
but it never fails, they all of a sudden, every year, they put something else in that's gonna cost us money.
It's really an important issue.
Well, I'm not saying that, but I don't think we should be finding out in March or
No, well, that's why we're
February that this is.
reporting on it now, and,
Right.
and we've already started.
Just another law that they passed without any funding to support it.
Yep.
It'd be a great idea, but it's gonna cost some money, so
Yeah.
it ought to be something.
It'd be great if they gave a rollout and gave, you know, little bins to every classroom.
Yeah,
You know, like the little kitchen.
yeah, I'm not against the idea at all, but it's just like, here you go, you gotta start this, and by the way, you better get going.
Yeah, yeah. And for some people, it's been a way of life forever, so.
Yep, no, we
Yeah.
do that at the farm, but
Yeah.
I'm just thinking on a bigger scale like the school,
Yeah, there's gonna be some hurdles,
360
then no
kids, that's
doubt.
a lot of
it's a lot
Yeah.
of garbage.
waste.
We'll make them all be eaters.
Make 'em be.
Eaters.
Well, and for farms
We'll
too,
start
it
the
depends,
clean plate.
it depends on the
That's right.
animals that you have, like my friends who have chickens, you know, they don't want coffee grounds, they don't want
Right.
citrus waste, and they don't want big raw things of dough that you mess up when you make bread. So,
All right, personnel, resignations, we have no resignation. Contract recommendations, you have those going around in front of you. Questions?
I make a motion to support the contract recommendations.
Second?
Second.
Comments? Questions?
I do have one question concerning the cell phone. It's a cell phone stipend, so that is that her personal phone that we're assisting?
Well, that's used, her personal phone for work, that's how all of us operate.
Okay, then I have a little bit of a, guess a caution to y'all. If you use your personal cell phones, okay, and an incident occurs, you will lose your cell phones. If you don't have specific cell phones only for work. Because then if you lose it, you still have your personal.
Gotcha.
But I'm just putting that out there. That's been happening more and more with different cases. And with the school, you'd probably see it more with, say, DCF type of thing. So I'm just putting it out there.
Good caution.
what does the two mean at the end of rhyme?
It's
academic?
probably semester two.
Semester two.
Okay.
Yep. All right. Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Unanimous?
Triple E case manager.
Christine's gonna speak to actually the next two items.
Those are two positions that were approved in our budget, and so just my question to the board is, can I post those prior to the final? Knowing that we will see those in both positions fulfilled.
I would think posting them is fine. I mean, everything is contingent upon the
Yeah.
budget passing, so,
Yeah.
Get them up there so we can.
yeah,
Yeah.
posting,
Definitely.
sure. I don't think there's any issue with posting. Anyone?
Yeah, no, I mean, in academia, they
support
do it all the time, and then you just don't
Yeah.
hire the person. Say,
Okay.
sorry, we interviewed you,
Yep.
but guess what?
E is an executive session
Yes.
issue.
Is-
Matthew is not here, so the chair's report, that is his.
Table, I make a motion to table?
To table his,
Yep.
Yeah.
sure. Second,
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Finance, Lewis?
I just
can I
have-
ask
Sure.
one question
Yeah.
real quick? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, not to belabor the point on the 100-point scale, but the last time we had this conversation, there was like surveys in motion or things like that. How's that? Where are we at with that piece? Because that's been what, a couple months or 6 weeks or so.
Yes, so we have a task force meeting that's looking at the proficiency-based grading systems. So we've started collecting samples both within our district and also from all of our regional curriculum partners. So we've been sending them in and we've been compiling them in our team folder. We're working on a draft of the survey, draft of the focus group questions, and a draft of a communication piece for school newsletters. The principals have all been asked to start thinking about recruiting for their school communities and identifying individuals who they think would be great additions to the school-based focus groups. And
So we're essentially in February. When do we anticipate having these focus groups in place?
so I had sent out a work plan. I think you guys have gotten
I
2
was-
meetings ago, so we're still following that work plan. So we will be looking at focus groups in February and I think the first week of March. are going
Late
to
February,
have-
March.
Yes, that we have for them and then compiling all the data in March.
Did anyone from the administrative team attend the state school board meeting when they took questions and testimony about proficiency?
Is that in that paper?
No, I
today?
was planning to attend and then something else came up that I had to take care of instead, but I did speak with a lot of the area curriculum directors who knew, we had our meeting on Friday, and they had a pretty good sense of who would be testifying at those hearings at that point in time, and some of the things that they anticipated were gonna come up. But they'll release a transfer for finding summaries from those hearings as well.
So I think that when things like that happen, we need to be more on task and be speaking as a voice from the SU. We've had, this has been a question, this has been ongoing, this isn't new, this has been on the table. And I think it's really important that we are providing testimony to and at least submitting comments about that. There are substantial concerns within at least 2 districts, and enough so that this task force has been put together. I guess I would hope for the next meeting, we'd have a little more information from exactly where the task force is. Where, I mean, I know that we received the work plan, but it doesn't, a little more information of what you've gathered, what's going on. It just seems like this is traveling. We've got the work plan, kind of hear the same thing. I'm not really sure what is being done, I guess. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but,
Lisa, would you clarify, were you speaking to the board advocating comments, or was I mishearing
so I
you?
think the state board was taking testimony, and I think it's important that, particularly when they're in Rutland, that we have representation there
From our board?
from our
Board
boards.
members.
And from central office speaking. I mean, even to say that we have created a task force, that this is a substantial concern within our SU, that we are doing X, Y, and Z, that, I think those are things that need to be put out there, that we shouldn't be complacent, that everyone is in love with proficiency, or that there aren't problems, that the state, as Clarence said, mandated, has put something down. There's really no follow-up to know if it's working, how it's working. There's no checkpoints in place. They just put it in place. And so I think that is our responsibility as central office, as board members, but also as central office also. So
Is the
that's
state
just
board- Is
personally.
the state board running around taking testimony?
They did.
They so they've met other places around the state, or I know they were thinking about taking the issue up.
They did at the last meeting.
Did they make any decision, or it's par for their course to do?
The follow-up question was that, or one of the comments was that they felt that the state board should continue to take comments because people were not comfortable coming and speaking before them. They thought there might be ramifications depending on what your position was, and they felt there were a few that felt the board should continue to take comments. They've made no decisions that I'm aware of. It kind of seems like in my personal opinion, a feel-good moment for them that they're taking testimony. But
If I could ask a couple questions, somewhere in the last 2 days, and I can't remember where I read it, that you're primarily focusing on 7 through 12. Of course, from Rutland Town, we have a major concern about this. We were told, well, the lower grades have already been doing proficiency, they're fine. Rutland Town has been complaining about this problem for more than 2 years. We have a major problem if you're excluding 3/4 of our students from this. I don't want to be, and this is my personal opinion, not coming from any board members except myself, we haven't discussed it this far, but I guess if we were to find that you weren't looking at the whole school, elementary school through 8, we just may have to have our own committee. Because we've been complaining about this, like I said, for over 2 years. And now again, we have a plan, we still haven't gotten anywhere, we're working on it, but this supervisory union has been a little misled previous years, said this is the way the state said we have to do it, this is why we're doing it this way, and then to find out now that, no, that's just what the superintendent told us, that we could do the grading different ways. So I'm just putting it out there. I was a little aghast when I saw it was 7 through 12. So and it was after we had our meeting, so I couldn't bring it up at the board meeting. And
So our task force is looking K through 12, and we're doing focus groups in the schools that have to prepare grade reports that send their students off to other
Right.
destinations. But the survey is K through 12, and the samples that we're collecting are K through 12.
Okay, it's just that I got the impression that if the 100 points, say, if we went with that, it was gonna be 7 through 12. It's just like, I don't wanna, parents being kind of used to the proficiency grading, and then all of a sudden in 7th grade, they go back to what I'll just deem normal grading. So, that was just my concern. Like I said, I haven't had a chance to talk to anybody about it, but thank you.
So, Lynette, so what I'm hearing is that, are you suggesting not to return to the 100 grade point system
not
for
at
the
all.
7 through 12?
No, I think.
So are you thinking, I'm just trying to clarify, so then you are saying to revert to the 100-point grading system for the other grades, K through 7, K through 8?
Ideally, I would like to see both. You could put the proficiency 3, 4, 3.4, whatever. But for parents or whatever, for grading, for seeing where the children are, I'm just using the 100-point. I know there's the, alphabet, whatever, alongside that, so that it would fit both.
Thank
And
you.
that's the way I would like to see it.
Thank you for clarifying for me.
Okay. Louis?
I think this is a carryover. I have nothing to report on this.
Add something.
We
Add
have,
something.
Thank you.
Attaboy.
I got a grant, and it's for $2 million, and we're all set next year.
So I'm guessing, are you
Our
doing?
budget's approved. All the budgets are approved at the local level. We're waiting now for
Town meeting.
town meeting. We'll be working over the next month to prepare PowerPoints and brochures and the annual booklets and
You have the contingency plan when all of them fail at town meeting.
Buying lottery tickets.
No, there you go.
Having more
right?
meetings.
We're gonna keep this positive, Clarence.
All right, food service, outstanding
12%,
balance.
we just written in our warning.
Is that you, Louis?
Yes.
Okay.
So in the packet is just an update.
They'll read.
In the packet is an update on the food service balances for the SU. These are balances that are outstanding from parents. So on the report, it lists the school, the number of delinquent accounts, the balance ranges, and the total delinquent balance. And then I've also included for an FYI just what the free and reduced percentage of that school is. We do have a procedure in place that we have reviewed at this board in the past for collecting. The collection is done at the local school level, and they're calling parents, sending letters, face-to-face meetings to try to collect these balances.
Is this just the fall 2019? Or is this carried over from?
It's carried over as well.
Okay, so it includes fall, but also previous? Okay.
So, at what point do we, if a child has left the school, is it still reflective in this balance?
It may be. I've asked schools to work with their local food service people to clean up balances that are uncollectible for students that have either moved, graduated, that no longer in contact. Some of them have done maybe a better job than that than others.
Has the collections been going? I mean, this is.
It's ongoing, so this is cumulative. It doesn't start fresh from the beginning of the year. So any balances at the end of June 30th, where schools still try to collect those over the course of the summer, and then they start back up again in July. So, I mean, it could be ongoing for years for some of them, if they're continuing students. Others, it could be new balances this year.
Louis, can you clarify for me on the bottom line for Middletown Springs, under the total delinquent balances? It appeared that line is for 30 accounts, but it's significantly higher from Wells, is that correct? Than Wells above for the same number of balances, like the 1,800 I'm
Yep.
looking at? I didn't know if that was correct, or if that was reflecting the total for the district, or,
That should be just for the school.
yeah.
I mean, I could go back and verify that, based on.
We have 10 of them that are
There
over
could be just a lot of,
$60.
it could be a lot of small balances.
The way it's spread,
What's-
it like
what's that?
looks. The way it's spread, it looks, Middletown has 10 over $60, and Wells only has 2 there.
Yeah, so there could be a lot of small balances that make up because anything that's under $10 is not included on this report in those columns.
Okay.
The
Oh,
dollar value would be included and the delinquent accounts would be included, but it wouldn't be in those 4 balance range columns. So there
There's
could
10
be,
that are beyond
Got it.
60.
there could be 20 balances that are all under $10, so the total isn't as high.
Yeah.
There's about, there would have to be 10 less than $10, so it would only be about 300, right? Yeah. That would add up.
I just think the way this spreads out, more than a third of ours is in the top category where,
Yeah.
And unfortunately, for some of these, I mean, we've taken every effort rather than taking that next step and really going to collections or a small claims court or anything like that. We've taken every effort, so we just continue the same steps over and over, and so a lot of times it's just
I mean,
not
I know we
successful.
can't get into specifics, but the ones that are 60 and over, say in Rutland Town's case, there's 27 of them. Is there any common theme of what kind of problems they're having, or?
I couldn't tell you the details, mainly because I don't know them specifically, because it is done at the school level. Some of them have been shared with me, and I mean, a lot of times it's just parents who just refuse to pay, and this board's policy was to keep providing meals and to not stop at any point. So if the parent's not paying and we're still providing meals, it just continues to rack up $3 each day.
Now, how are we going to, I think the legislature is right now looking at having
Those are
free
my
lunches
questions.
for everybody.
Breakfast.
So where are we gonna go with that, and where are we gonna find that money?
Yeah, where are you gonna fund it? Couldn't tell you how they're gonna fund it.
They'll just take it out of the ed fund and cut
Probably right, Clarence.
So, I mean,
Right.
and don't get me wrong, there's no child that should be hungry. I just, you know, we can go way into this because it goes to society and everything else. But there must be something we can do.
I mean, so no kids are going without a meal, so no kids
Right.
are going hungry, so everyone's provided for.
As it should be.
If they're free and reduced, they get a meal. If they're paid, they're either bringing their own lunch, or parents are paying for their lunch, or they're charging it and parents aren't paying for their lunch. I'm one of those, but every kid is getting a meal if they need a meal. The only thing they're not allowed to do is charge a la carte items. So if someone wants to go up and just get the piece of the meal or a drink, of milk, they can't do that. They have to get the full meal. That's all that we allow.
That doesn't seem to be intelligent, but I guess, I understand à la carte items are, you know, special, but if, you know, if someone just wants a milk, it seems like that would be something that you should be looking at your districts.
Yeah, that's a big topic.
I guess this is gonna lead me into my question that I was going to hold until new business, but we're talking about food. And one of the issues I've had when looking through the warrants is the amount of money we're spending at the administrative level and central office level for meals or food. And I find it problematic because I'm not sure it's our responsibility to feed you when you have an admin meeting. And I don't believe that we say that in contracts that we're feeding you, and this is my thing. But when I read through the warrants and I see the numbers, and I guess the one that kind of tipped the scale for me was the one for the Christmas party for central office. I find those bothersome, particularly when we're gonna sit here and talk about kids and food. When we were the old RCSU, we made it clear when we passed our budgets at the SU meeting that food was not included. We did not fund that. And so I think that's something we need to start looking at. I go to a meeting, I bring a drink, I bring a snack. We send kids on a field trip. We tell them to bring $10, pack a sack lunch, or they can get a lunch from school. We're not paying for them, and I think that's something we need to reevaluate at this level. And I hope that it is something that we will start to reevaluate at the administrative level. Proficiency-based learning update, we just had that. New business. Well, Christine, since you're here, I have a question. When students that we tuition out for whatever reason, what is our oversight, or what is the school's accountability back to us that the student we're paying tuition for is actually attending the school?
We provide, when they bill us, the attendance.
Okay, and so,
But I am working, I will say, we do have some schools that we are pushing that with, that we need to get those reporting regularly. And usually, I mean, we have regular, usually update meetings and IEP meetings that we attend.
okay. It just has come to conversation that, we don't see that here, we just see the number of this huge number that we're tuitioning students out. And I am concerned that students, not all students, are attending these schools on a regular basis, that some students have significant holes in their attendance. And how does that impact the tuition? Has no impact. We're still paying full tuition. And what's our remedy to that? I mean, well, if the student was in our school and he wasn't attending, we have policy and procedure in place that if my child wasn't going to school, the building administrator is going to be calling me, you're going to be calling the school resource officer. There's going to be a litany of people at my door if my student isn't in the school. I guess I'm curious why that same policy doesn't operate. Those students belong to us, we're tuitioning them to another school, how they fall outside of the policy.
I mean, I have an expectation that we do collect, and that is part of the contract that we have, that they have to send in the attendance. And then, you know, I get notified, or I ask them to make sure they notify me if we're having an attendance issue, then we will call a meeting and figure out, you know, what's going on. It's not always, I don't always get the notification in a timely manner. I have had some of those issues, and I am.
Is that on all students, Christine, or the ones that have special needs? Everybody, okay.
There's students within, you know, that are in other programs outside, like that independent placement, that alternative placement.
I think it would be interesting if we could, at some point, maybe just see what those numbers look like, the number of absences based on the number of students, and if, you know, one particular institution is a little more negligent or a little more loosey-goosey, perhaps. I mean, we're paying significant dollars to send these students for a particular reason, and if the student isn't attending, that's a problem in a lot of avenues. So I just think it might be interesting to see what that looks like, and if there are particular institutions maybe that are not as, don't have the oversight. And I guess I would be interested to know how those students fall outside the policy of not being, if they're not attending, how they don't end up with the school resource officer or whatever that is that comes to your door when your student doesn't attend. So, all right. Anyone else have any new business? And I'm sorry, I was negligent when we started, and Judith said, Mary is our new representative from IRA, and because we were running late, I was like, boom, right ahead. So, welcome, Mary. And thank you for joining us.
Would you guys like to go around and introduce yourselves? Because I'm sure Mary doesn't know. And what district?
I can start. I'm Laura Birch from Wells Springs.
Clarence Haynes, Wells Springs.
Eric Mobrine, Wells Springs.
Kristen Ross in Quarry Valley.
Lisa Miser, Quarry Valley.
Jim Mumford, West Rutland School, Quarry Valley.
Lynn Gallipo, Rutland Town.
Tim Hammond, Rutland Town.
And this is Lewis, our business manager.
We've met. Yeah.
Christine Van, Director of Student Services.
All right, if there are no other questions, we require an executive session for personnel matter.
So moved.
Second.
And a possible contract.
And a possible contract. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.